Recording in progress.
Hi, so welcome. So today we're having discussions on how to identify parametric and non-parametric tests in a question. So the thing is, when you go through your past question under section B, especially, you could see that you are tasked to identify the type of test within some given questions, and you are supposed to also justify. So these are the key things you are tasked to do. First, identify the type of test in the question and justify why you decided to select that test. So let's say these are the questions under section B, and we are tasked to answer them. So the first question, you could see per the first question, we are comparing two groups. That's negative self-image and positive self-image. Then you ask yourself, what are they really measuring? Within the question, they are measuring social anxiety. So it means social anxiety is the dependent variable. Then you find out social anxiety falls under what type of scale of measurement. And lucky for you, it was indicated within the question. So when you read further, you can see that they indicated that social anxiety was measured on interval scale. So since you've been given the question that the DV, which is a dependent variable, is on interval, then it means a parametric test will come to mind. You're supposed to select a parametric test. But what type of parametric test are you supposed to select? You can see they are comparing two groups, two independent groups. That's negative self-image and positive self-image. So since they are comparing two groups and the dependent variable is on interval, then it means you're supposed to select independent t-test as the type of test you'll be using. So per the justification, you explaining your answer, you first emphasize that from the question, we are given two independent groups, into brackets, positive and negative self-imagery or image. Then you move further and talk about the fact that the dependent variable, which is social anxiety, is on interval scale. So therefore, the appropriate test to use is independent t-test. Within the same question, have they indicated that social anxiety this time around is on ordinal, or sometimes they will say rank. It has been ranked. Then it means that you wouldn't use a parametric test. It means select the non-parametric form of independent t-test. So the non-parametric form of independent t-test is what is referred to as Mann-Whitney U test. So it means within the same question, they could have just changed just one word and the type of test you'll be using would have been different. The moment you realize that they are comparing two groups or two independent groups, and this time around, the dependent variable is on ordinal, or sometimes they wouldn't emphasize ordinal, they will indicate rank. The moment you see that, then it means don't use independent t-test, because independent t-test is a parametric test, and always the dependent variable should either be on interval or ratio. But this time around, they've indicated it is on ordinal. So it means select the non-parametric form of independent t-test, and that's the Mann-Whitney U test. Okay. So the next question. So when you read the next question, you could see that they are comparing a sample to a population. So within the question, they indicated that students of the Department of Psychology differ from the entire student. So it means students of Department of Psychology, that's the sample, or they've been drawn from the entire university, which is the population. So it means when it comes to this question, they are comparing a sample and a population. And per all the tests that we've done, I told you only two tests will fall within this question. That's z-test or one sample t-test. Because these are the two tests we normally compare a sample and a population. Then you ask yourself, what is the difference between z-test and one sample t-test? The only difference has to do with the fact that with z-test, always the population mean and the population standard deviation should be given in the question. But with one sample t-test, they wouldn't give you the population standard deviation. So find out within the question, have they provided the population standard deviation or not? You could see that within the question, they didn't provide the population standard deviation. So it means select one sample t-test as your answer. One sample t-test as your answer. All right, so the justification would be that from the question, they are comparing a sample to a population. Also, the dependent variable, which is religiosity, is on interval scale. Again, the population standard deviation was not provided in the question. Therefore, the appropriate test to use is one sample t-test. Then the next question. So within the next question, it's quite trickery. Find out what are they really comparing. You can see within the question, they are comparing public university and distance program. Sorry, they are comparing regular program and distance program. These are the two things they are comparing. They are all coming from the same university, all right, or public university. So they are comparing regular students and distance students. And what were they really measuring in the question? The question, they were measuring what? Quality of grades. So quality of grade is the dependent variable. And they are comparing two independent groups. That's regular program and distance program on quality of grades. Then you ask yourself, quality of grades is one, it falls under what type of scale of measurement? You can see they indicated quality of grades was categorized into poor, fair, good. When you see categorized, your mind might tune into nominal scale because we emphasize that with nominal, we categorize or something. So you might think that, okay, this is more or less like nominal. But see the trend. They've indicated poor, fair, good. So it means that if someone is seen as poor and another person is seen as another person's grade is perceived to be fair, there's a difference. There's that sort of magnitude. One is higher than the other. Poor is lower than fair, and fair is also lower than good. So it means that this is more or less like ordinal. We've ranked the students' grades, because if someone gets an A and another person gets a B, okay, or maybe a C, we would indicate that, okay, grade A is good, whereas grade C is what? Is fair. So it means that we've ranked the students via performance or grades. So it means that quality of grades has been reduced to ordinal. Hence, we are supposed to use a non-parametric test. Then you ask yourself, which of the non-parametric tests do we normally compare two independent groups? And that's Mann-Whitney U test, because Mann-Whitney U test is the non-parametric form of independent t-test. So it means this question, you're supposed to use Mann-Whitney U test, because with Mann-Whitney U, we have two independent groups. And within the question, the two independent groups were what? Regular and distance program. And the dependent variable has been reduced to ordinal. So that's the justification you would provide. Okay, so the next question, within the next question, they we have two main variables. That's variable one, which is interim assessment examination. Then the next variable is the final exams. So it means they are comparing two variables and they want to find out how these two variables are related. So that's why they indicated. A researcher hypothesized that performance in an IA exams in Site 303 is a good predictor of performance in final exams. So when you say something is a good predictor, then it means that if someone does well in the IA, we expect the person to also do well in the final exams. So it means if IA increases, we expect final exams to also increase. So this is a typical positive relationship. Then you ask yourself the two variables, that's IA and final exams. What scale of measurement do they fall under? And luckily, what they've bolded, they've indicated that the two exams are all on interval. So since IA and final exams, they are all on interval, and they are trying to establish relationship between the variables, then it means the best test that will fit this question is Pearson R. Or the full, you can, if you like, you can indicate the full name, which is Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. All right. Uh, that's what you do. Pearson, so the answer is Pearson R, or sometimes referred to as Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. So what will be your justification? You first indicate that within the question, they are trying to establish relationship between two variables. That's interim assessment, examination, and final examination, or end of semester examination. Then you also emphasize that the two examination scores are on interval scale. Therefore, Pearson R will be the best test. Within the same question, they could have indicated that this time around, one of the variables, maybe interim assessment, is on, or it has been reduced to ordinal. The moment they indicate that one of them or both variables are on ordinal, then it means you wouldn't use Pearson, because Pearson is a parametric test. So it means select the non-parametric form of Pearson. And the non-parametric form will be Spearman. That's Spearman R. That would have been what you would have selected. Okay. The next question. So with the next question, you can see they are comparing 4 different groups: Metro TV, GTV, TV3, and Vansat 1. And you ask yourself, within the question, what are they really measuring? So they are measuring the number of times people laugh. So laugh will be the dependent variable. And the independent variable will be the type of TV network. So on a type of TV network, they have manipulated it into different groups. That's Metro TV, GTV, TV3, and Vansat 1. So it means that they are comparing 4 different groups on a dependent variable, which is laugh, or the number of times someone laughs. Then you ask yourself, laugh, it was measured on what? They've indicated that it is measured on interval. So the moment you realize that the dependent variable is measured on interval or ratio, then it means you should tune your mind that you'll be using a parametric test. Then you ask yourself, among all the parametric tests, which of them do we normally compare more than 2 groups? So the best test that will fit here is one-way ANOVA. Why? Because we are comparing more than 2 groups, and the dependent variable, which is laugh, is on interval. Yet at the same time, the independent variable, which is type of TV network, is only one. So hence, select one-way ANOVA. So it means per your explanation, you indicate that from the question, we have 4 independent groups. Also, the independent variable, which is the type of TV network, is only one. Again, the dependent variable, which is lab, is on interval scale. Hence, one-way analysis of variance or one-way ANOVA will be the appropriate test. The same question, they could have indicated that lab this time around is on ordinal, or it has been ranked. Then you would have selected the non-parametric form of ANOVA. And the non-parametric form of ANOVA is Kruskal-Wallis. So the same question, they could have just indicated that this time around, lab is on ordinal, or it has been ranked. Then you would have selected Kruskal-Wallis as your answer. And you justifying, you follow the same format. First, we have 4 independent groups. Then the TV network, which is the independent variable, is only one. Then this time around, the dependent variable, which is lab, is on ordinal scale. Hence, Kruskal-Wallis will be the appropriate test. Okay. So the next question. With the next question, they were trying to measure verbal skills ability. So they sampled some students. So when you go through, if you see the dependent variable, which is verbal skill, as I indicated, it is measured on interval scale. Then go through again. If you see each child, they tested each child twice. That's before the intervention and after the intervention, or after they completed the 4-week special class. So it means each participant went through 2 separate tests. So since each child went through, or each participant went through 2 separate tests, then the best test here will be correlated t-test, or sometimes referred to as dependent t-test. Correlated t-test or dependent t-test. That's the best test to use. Why? Because correlated t-test is a parametric test. And since they indicated that verbal skill is on interval, then it means we are supposed to select correlated. But the same question, they could have just indicated verbal skill is on ordinal, or it has been ranked. Then this time around, we wouldn't select correlated T, but rather select its non-parametric test. And the non-parametric test for correlated T is Wilcoxon matched pairs signed ranks, or sometimes you can shorten it and make it Wilcoxon test. You'll be given the full marks. So the same question, they could have just framed it. The only where they would have changed was changing the interval to ordinal. Then it means use Wilcoxon match pair sign ranks. Then you justify by saying that the 2 set of scores, they are related. So if you choose correlated t-test, you indicate that the 2 set of scores are related. Also, the dependent variable, which is verbal skill, is on interval scale. But had it been Wilcoxon, you indicate the two sets of scores are related. However, the dependent variable, which is verbal skill, is on ordinal skill. Okay. And the next question, with that, you can see they are comparing two separate groups. So we have public JHS and private JHS. And they indicated that performance in BEC, which is the dependent variable, is on interval scale. So since they are comparing two separate groups, public and private JHS, and the dependent variable is on interval, then it means that you're supposed to select independent t-test as your answer. Because with independent t-test, we compare two independent groups, and the scale of measurement should either be interval or ratio. And we can find these things in the question. So it means per your justification, you indicate that from the question, they are comparing two independent groups, into brackets, public and private JHS. Then the dependent variable, which is performance in BEC, is on interval scale. Hence, the appropriate test to use is independent t-test. All right. Then with the next question. The next question has to do with they comparing identical twins. And they are trying to measure susceptibility to schizophrenia. So susceptibility to schizophrenia is the dependent variable. And when you read further, they are telling you each member of the twin or each member of the identical twin. So one of the member was placed in a stressful environment and the other member was placed in a non-stressful environment. So although we've assigned the members of the identical twins in separate environments, so long as they are identical, we assume that they are still the same. They have similar characteristics. Hence, you're supposed to use dependent t-test. So go through dependent or correlated t-test. We gave you some three main criteria that would inform you that the scores of the participants are related. So you can go through, I've done that in my previous videos. So you can, if you're having challenges, go back and watch the video. So since they are identical twins and susceptibility to schizophrenia, which is the dependent variable, is on interval scale, then it means select a parametric test. And the best parametric test will be correlated t-test or dependent t-test, or sometimes also referred to as t-test for matched samples. So how do you explain this? You first emphasize that the scores of the two sets of scores for members of the identical twins are related. Again, the dependent variable, which is susceptibility to schizophrenia, was measured on interval scale. Therefore, the appropriate test to use is correlated t-test. All right. Then the last question. With the last question, when you read further, you will see that you were comparing the 15 high school students to the entire population. So it means we have a big set of students who are taking SAT, which is the population. Then out of this, they've selected 15 students. So it means they are comparing a sample and a population. And as I said, when you realize they are comparing a sample and a population in the question, two tests should come to mind. One sample t-test and z-test. Then you find out the difference. Always with z-test, the population mean and the population standard deviation should be given in the question. But with one sample t-test, they wouldn't provide the population standard deviation. So let's find out whether they provided the population standard deviation in the question. So when you read the first sentence, it should give you a clue. They indicated the population average for such scores is known to be 500 with a standard deviation of 100. And when we say average, it means it's the same as we say mean. It's the same as mean. So it means the population mean is 500 and the population standard deviation is 100. So it means that with this question, they have provided the population mean and the population standard deviation. So the best test to use here is z-test. So you justifying first, you emphasize that from the question, they are comparing a sample to a population. Also, the population mean and the population standard deviation have been provided in the question. Then again, performance in SAT is measured on at least interval scale. Hence, the appropriate test to use is z-test. So that's how you identify parametric and non-parametric tests in a given question. Okay, so that will be the end of today's discussion. Bye.